Everybody,
Wang Chung tonight.
everybody wank chung tonight. All right, let's do it.
Everybody Wang Chung. Let's go.
You got it? You
Yeah,
ready?
I'm
You
fucking
doing it?
ready. I've been ready.
I was born ready. I mean, I wasn't. I was born, pre-verbal.
Premature. I was born prematurely and put in an incubator.
Hello and welcome to the Fleeting Thoughts podcast. I am Joe. Who are you?
I am Channing.
You know what we you know what we need to
What?
do? Let's start over. I keep on wanting to do this where I tell you, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the thing and then I'm going to say my name is, and then I'm going to expect you to somehow know to just chime in with, oh, and I'm Channing,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
as opposed to like me just saying it. So let's do this again.
Okay.
The
From the
professional
top.
way.
Yeah, perfect.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fleeting Thoughts podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Channing.
Look
at that. Nailed
it. I like to clap.
Look at that. It only took 2 takes. Nailed it.
Yeah, it only took one take after we decided it.
Well, the listeners will just think it was one take.
That's right.
The magic of editing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna edit shit. It's too much work.
I just post this whole thing and people could just listen to it in all of its glory.
Yeah, I'll edit the audio version and maybe get rid of the beginning, but video editing is such a hassle. You gotta like timeline and you gotta like cut and paste and
I think a lot of people probably when they're doing video and audio don't really edit the video nowhere near as much as the actual just audio format for sure.
Yeah, and I think audio is so much more important anyway. The whole thing is 90% listening and 10% who gives a shit what we look like.
It's true. Yeah, I don't even listen to any podcasts like through YouTube or anything. I just have a podcast app because usually I'm listening to a podcast while I'm doing other stuff, like out for a walk or running or it's usually my podcast time. Driving back and forth to work.
What is your podcast app? What do you use?
I use Spotify. And then I have Patreon also because there's a couple of podcasts that I subscribe to monthly on Patreon, and then you usually get like bonus episodes and stuff. But primarily I use Spotify.
Is Patreon an app and it's similar to Spotify in that you like look up a channel and then you can download and do all that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what the creators, what kind of content they're making. But yeah, if it's a podcast and usually they have like the different paid tiers and you subscribe for whatever tier you want. And then it just unlocks all their stuff. It's almost like a little news feed in the Patreon app. So usually when they like a new episode comes out, it just posts in your feed and you can just listen to it or download it through there.
Yeah, I guess probably most people don't have too many Patreon accounts that they're following because you have to pay for them. So it's like you're not going to have I guess some richer people who really want to give to artists, which would be super cool. But yeah, I haven't used Patreon yet. There's a few people that I feel like I should, but I feel like I'm also trying to pay my own bills, so I don't have quite enough for them yet. But one of these days, one of these days,
I'm
gonna be a patron.
We could set up our own Patreon at some point if we wanted.
Yeah, if anybody is interested in additional content and supporting us, holler at your boys. Wow,
that was very hip of you to say. Holler. I like how you really made it like you said it like a super white guy though, because you instead of holla, you went holler. Holler at your boys.
I don't know. Why don't you holler at your boys? Maybe you could do that,
but not in like a parent scolding kind of holler. Just let us know.
No, it's a nice holler. It's a nice little holler. Now I'm saying holler.
More
you
like
can't say it all in the Cockney accent.
I'd appreciate it if you just called upon me. How about that?
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh,
just
maybe ring the bell
on the computer.
Ring the little bell.
Hello.
Say hello.
I'm here to support you.
Hello.
I appreciate the things you guys talk about, and I want to give you some pounds.
I'm excited about the words coming out of your mouths. Your mouths.
Your form sentences that I very much get along with.
I understand them. Oh, I relate, bro. I relate, bruv.
It's bruv.
Yeah, bruv. Sorry.
Bruv.
Sorry. Fucking bruv.
If there's
Fucking
anything I
pirate.
learned from the Kingsman
Police.
movies, it's that they use the word
Yeah.
bruv.
The fucking, what is it? Northern Cockney or something?
The
youth Cockney.
I imagine when we're doing like an attempt at some kind of English accent, it's probably like 50 different English accents that we're just melding together.
And then there's like the posh English where it's like, oh, that's very nice. Yes. And they pronounce everything very well. And there's no room for interpretation. Or now I'm gonna do into Daniel Plainview.
We speak very directly, and we enunciate each word to perfection, so that there's no question.
The Queen's English, yes, indeed.
Yes, the Queen's, the royalty language.
Royalty, royal. We are not royal. It's not in our blood. Isn't that a song?
It is now.
We are not.
Even if it wasn't.
I think that's how it goes. We are not royal. It is not in our blood. We're not proud of our address.
I'm a royal. I got super lucky in the genetic lottery.
Oh, I am a royal.
I was very privileged when born.
Yeah, I imagine. It's like being born to a famous celebrity, but also everybody kind of knows who you are, because the royals are like celebrities, but just because of tradition. They're not celebrities for any entertainment purpose. They're celebrities. They're essentially celebrities because of tyranny. They're like, well, we kind of got rid of tyranny, but like these people still are enjoying the success of that situation where we had lords and queens and kings and stuff. And I mean, they're so fucking rich that like for generations they'll never have to work. And isn't that fun to watch? All of that in a British accent, of course.
And your answer is yes.
Yes. Oh, it's
just yes.
Delicious.
It's a jolly good time.
It's wonderful. Oh, traditional tyranny. Oh, wonderful.
Give me money because I was born. Yeah,
it's kind of like if plantation owners today, their children were really famous just because of that, and like we didn't mind it.
I mean, we have to pay the black people, but
we have to pay everyone. It's a fucking bummer. Feudalism is dead. I hate it.
It's a real disappointment.
It's a real problem.
My family nearly slipped into poverty because we had to start paying the servants. It's not a good time for us. It's a dark time.
It's not a good time for us. All this wealth going around everywhere other than my pockets. Why are we talking about this? What's happening?
I don't know. This is a great icebreaker, though. You know, I feel like this just really got the ball rolling. No fluff here.
No fluff. No, all tough.
Well, any of the listeners in the UK are unsubscribing, I'm sure, right now.
I'm sure they are.
You sons of bitches.
I'm sure the ones who are listening to us are not the fucking royals. I'm pretty sure they're the working class.
Probably.
You know, similar to us, who are like, I want to know about the American experience. They're also children, if you didn't know.
Sound like old men.
Oh, is that an old man? I like to. No, that's a pirate, I think. I like to figure it out. No, that's an Australian pirate.
We're in the outback.
All right, now, fucking E. I have no consistency. It's not important.
I don't either. I'm pretty bad at like starting. I start a sentence in one accent and then the sentence ends in a different part of the world.
What I have a problem with is at work, we have a lot of Russian customers, and they have just stereotypical Russian accents, and I just want to do it back to them. I want them to feel comfortable, and I want them to think like I totally dig your accent. I think it's great. I think it's super authentic sounding, and they give a fuck. But I just want to be like, oh no, it's cool, fine, get over here. I help you. We get out of here. It's no problem. I love you. It's great. Buy things.
I love America. Very great people here.
No, I want them to feel comfortable. To me, comfort means hearing something similar to the way you sound. The problem is if I do that if I go like, no, it's fine, no problem.
We are here
they're gonna start speaking Russian to me because they're like, well, obviously this guy's Russian. He looks Russian. He sounds Russian. He's not faking this for any. Why would he do that? That makes no sense.
Big beard like Russian uncle.
You are like only uncle have beard. It is sign of singular. He is no wife.
Maybe it was my aunt. I don't remember.
oh, hairy Russians.
It's cold, man. It's cold there. They gotta.
Yeah, you gotta grow hair. Yeah, that is true. In like most like primates, they're hairy all over the place. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. Like no male ape is going like, oh, I can't believe you didn't shave your legs, other ape lady. Whereas we're like, why you have hair? It's weird. Why you have all this hair around your body and keeping you warm? I will keep you warm.
It's very abrasive when we are in the bedroom.
It is abrasive.
Trying to grind up on you. And
it's not abrasive if it's like long hair. It's only abrasive like after you shave it and it grows back for a day or two. It's not like hair isn't abrasive naturally when it's longer.
My cock is all rug burn.
It is all burn. It is, well, to keep us warm. It's warm. It's a warm burn.
Is it the gonorrhea? Is it the pubic hair? I don't know.
Either way, it's nice and warm and toasty. Is gonorrhea make things warm? I'm assuming something there. I don't know.
I just assume every STI is just flaming misery.
STI? Is that what you call? Is that what the kids are calling them?
Yeah, sexually transmitted infection, not disease. Infection.
Wouldn't that be STI?
I mean, you could go STI.
Because then STI is kind of like confuses the vowel. Like I can't tell if it's an E or an I.
But if it's STI, is it an I or a Y?
Also,
is it a sexually transmitted yarn? Sexually transmitted Yahtzee? I don't know.
A sexually transmitted yarn is a tale that's passed down only between lovers.
It's the cautionary tales of the sexually transmitted.
Spinning a yarn. These are the important topics of the day.
Yeah. What have you been up to this last week? Since it's been a week since we've chatted. How was your week?
It's good. Not much going on.
I know.
My brain is awash with so much nothingness.
So many tales to tell you. Where do I begin?
No, I had Monday off and I ran around and did chores and I got all my chores done by like 11 o'clock. And then I didn't know what to do with myself. I like was done and I just sort of like laid around the house and watched TV. And so I was very lazy and I played my guitar and watched a bunch of television and YouTube and really chilled the hell out. So that was fun. And then I went to work.
Sounds like pretty standard
the next days.
Pandemic living, you know?
Yeah, I concentrated on, not infecting myself at my own home. And I had sushi. I ate sushi.
Whoa.
Pretty exciting.
Like real sushi, or is it like, California smoked salmon roll kind of sushi? Or is it like legit?
I think it was pretty. Yeah, it was raw fish and unagi and salmon fancy. With a little rice underneath it. And it said cooking raw things can possibly cause
explosions
in the butt area.
Do not cook this raw fish or it'll murder you.
I've been working on my version of the Johnny Cash song written by 9 Inch Nails, Hurt. So every day I'm practicing that song.
Good song.
And I'm getting better at it. It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's fairly easy musically, so it's a good one to practice.
Like when his kind of last really big hits, wasn't it? Because he did that song pretty late in his career.
Well, that album was not that old, not that long ago, and it was produced by Rick Rubin, and that was I think his last album. It was kind of his like going away album because he hadn't made albums for a while, and then he I think he knew he wanted to make a final album, and that single was huge.
David Bowie a little bit, where like he did that whole last album like knowing he was dying basically from cancer.
Oh really?
So,
yeah.
So like a lot of the songs are like about death and finality. And
yeah, same.
Kind of an interesting thing to listen to.
Yeah, that Hurt song is very, very dark and sad, very emotional, and but I like it. I think it's fun. It's a fun practice because I can sing and I can play the chords to it as well. Not well, but eventually I'll try, and I'll probably do a recording of it when I feel like it's pretty decent.
But nice. Yeah. Mine was not much different. Just working and then writing. Good. I've hit like this weird wall with the novel that I'm working on. I think I'm just gonna go back to the beginning and just like almost do, because I'd say it's probably about half to 2/3 written. But I don't like the novel's changed so much since I started it. Like there's whole things that have been cut out. There's whole things I've gone back and added in. And so now it's like I feel sort of discombobulated with the whole story. So I'm like, I want to go back to the beginning.
Reacquaint yourself.
Just like read through it and like work on some more rewrites and just kind of get it more in focus. Because it's weird. It's like, I think it's because I've changed, the story has evolved and changed so much that I feel like earlier parts of the story don't make any sense with what's going on now. So it's like I just sort of want to go back and like get it all lined up and then keep going. And
sure.
So yeah, it's kind of weird. I like was on I started to play with the idea of just scrapping the whole thing, starting over again, but I don't really want to do that because I feel like the story is good. It's just I just gotta get it cleaned up a little bit and kind of get it straightened out. Yeah, so I've been working on that. We watched the new the Zack Snyder Justice League cut last night, which is like 4 hours long. It's really good. There's that Justice League movie that came out in theaters like a few years ago sucked. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I heard it was really, really bad. I didn't know the new one that was out. I just saw like the trailer for it like the other day. I didn't know it was already out.
Yeah, just hit HBO Max a couple days ago on the 18th. So we sat down and watched that last night, and yeah, it's really good.
The trailer looked really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with what happened, but Zack Snyder had filmed basically the whole movie was filmed. They just had post-production stuff and editing and adding digital effects and all like that stuff still needed to be done. And then his daughter committed suicide, and so he just had to step away from the project. Basically, like I think he tried to work through it for a little bit and just couldn't. You know, he just had to step back basically. And then they hired Joss Whedon, who at the time was coming off of the success of the Avengers, because he did the first Avengers movie, and then I think Age of Ultron also. I think he wrote and directed both of those, and so those were huge successes for Marvel. And so I think that's why DC hired him to come in and kind of finish the movie. Well, what ended up happening is he ended up refilming a whole bunch of that movie, and it ended up being a completely different project than what Zack Snyder was doing. And so I think they said that like Joss Whedon scrapped like 70% of the stuff that he had filmed and then did reshoots of his own. And basically the Justice League, I think it came out like 2017, I think. That movie just sucked. They had just a bunch of really so you didn't watch the theatrical one?
I might have. It's so unremarkable. I don't remember. I remember that was the one with like it had Superman and Batman, and they were fighting in the like broke down building.
Oh no, that was Batman versus Superman. That was the one. That was like the prequel to Justice League.
Yeah, maybe I watched that one, or just that scene. Ultimately, I kind of don't like Ben Affleck's Batman anyway. So and then I'm not into almost any of those characters, even Superman, who I used to think was cool. I think it's kind of boring. His whole thing. But so I haven't checked it out. But the new movie, the Zack Snyder one, looked really dark and interesting, and I'd probably watch it because I like superhero movies. But I'm not that into it.
It's definitely worth a watch. But I'm with you. I'm not a big DC fan. Like Batman is the only DC character that I really like a lot. Like Batman's probably my favorite like comic book superhero. But Marvel has like a much better, I think, cast of characters to use. Like that DC, I don't care about Aquaman that much. Wonder Woman's okay. Superman's just really boring because he's just this generic guy who's amazing at everything and just like all powerful. So he's just not a very engaging character. I feel like there's plenty of people who would disagree, I'm sure, but But no, it's the Zack Snyder cut's awesome because the Joss Whedon cut just had like a bunch of weird forced humor in it that was like trying to mimic what Avengers was doing with kind of a more like some more levity in it. Whereas Zack Snyder had sort of developed the antithesis of that, like the Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. Those are pretty dark, kind of more depressing, drab style movies. And then with Justice League, they tried to turn it into basically a Marvel movie, and it just it was a nasty mess.
Yeah, that makes sense because Joss Whedon did those other Marvel movies, so they were hoping that they could grab that audience, but that's a tough thing to force because the chemistry and the I mean, it's probably mostly the writing, but it's also the chemistry between the actors like that make those Marvel movies so good.
Well, and it came out like over the last year that there was a lot of bad blood like on that set after Zack Snyder had stepped away. Like I guess Joss Whedon was accused of all kinds of like abusive behavior, and a lot of people kind of did not, I guess, get along with him. And so it's nice that it's cool that Zack Snyder was able to come back and finish it. He didn't get paid for it. Like he chose to not be paid so that he had more leverage to do what he wanted, because he's one of those directors that he likes to film these really long elaborate movies, and then production companies and producers and they go in there and have them edited a bunch of crap out because they always want movies to be 2 hours or whatever to appeal to a larger audience. And he's one of those directors that when you make him cut his movies down so much, they just that was part of the problem with Batman vs Superman, is the editing was a little janky because of all the stuff that they had to cut out of it to make it, appeal to the higher ups and the people paying for the movie and everything. So it was cool that he was just like, I don't even want to be paid for this. Like, you guys paid for me to film the movie once already. I just want to go in and actually see this thing through and finish it. So
yeah, that's how you can kind of tell that somebody's really invested in the art as opposed to the just the paycheck. I'm actually not super familiar with Zack Snyder, so I thought I would look at his IMDb.
Yeah, you definitely watched some of his movie. He did Dawn of the Dead, 300.
Yeah,
he did that one. He did Sucker Punch, Watchmen.
Oh, Sucker Punch. Yeah, that was a really interesting movie.
Yeah, he does a lot of really visual. He's very like invested in like the comic book style of storytelling and like that visual medium. So and it's definitely that darker aesthetic, which I think most of those comics actually were originally. They were not always, I mean, a lot of them came out of the like World War II era and were traditional hero stories, which are not funny typically. No, they definitely got more lighthearted. I think when they started aiming them more toward children.
Yeah, like Iron Man, obviously that kind of almost Disney-esque hero, where he's a little sharp, he's funny, but he's charismatic, but he's also like not chopping people's heads off and stuff and cursing and fucking and all that. Like he's not a real man. Because my definition of a real man is chopping heads off and fucking.
Yeah, and fucking. Like maybe fucking the chopped off heads. And if you're like Ed Kemper or something.
When you're in the fucking red zone, you ain't paying attention to what's alive and what's dead. You're just
paying attention to what feels good on your penis.
Following your heart. I'm following my heart. Like Conan the Barbarian, man, that's fucking manly. No, you know what I mean. It's child friendly, but that's why I love the Iron Man movies, because it has such good action, but it's also fun. It's also like I don't have to sit there and like go, oh, I guess I'm feeling sad.
And I think that's part of like the recipe that's made the Marvel movies so successful is like they're action packed. They have pretty solid stories, fun characters, and then there's like levity in there, which DC was going a different route, which I appreciated because
they should.
Go the darker, more dour route. Like, who cares?
You'll have your audience. It just might not be as big, but you're not gonna fucking catch up with the damn Marvel thing. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, it was worth watching though. Like, especially I don't know if you subscribe to HBO Max, but if you have the chance, like maybe to like sit down and watch like Man of Steel and then the Batman vs Superman and then the Snyder cut of Justice League. It's good.
If I have
good series,
what is that, 8 hours?
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that because I mean it was really like a fan campaign online, like with the big hashtag, like the reveal the Snyder cut or whatever the fuck it was. Like it was basically Warner Brothers felt that pressure, and then that was part of the reason why they allowed him to come back and actually do this version of the movie. And now people, and myself included, are like, can we just, because he had plans to do 3 Justice League movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this Justice League sets up like a bunch of events that would lead into the next one. So now you're like kind of left hanging, and you're like, you guys are you guys going to let him come in and like fucking finish the story? Because it's like headed in very interesting directions. So it'll be curious to see if Warner Bros. Like if the success of this on HBO Max is so big that it's like hard for them to ignore.
Well, and HBO is pretty known for their unorthodox offerings. Like they have stuff that, like, they were doing long form dramatic series that were unfiltered essentially way before most people. And so I don't see why they wouldn't embrace that more niche kind of storytelling.
Well, and they could even do it in like an episodic format on HBO Max. They don't have to do, these big blockbuster budgeted movies. And I mean, you could probably just do like a Game of Thrones style thing. Maybe just do like a 2-season thing that covers the events of those 2 movies that he had planned or something. I'm sure that they could find a way to make it work if they want to.
I'm sure they have money, as long as this one makes money. That's all they care about is, is this popular enough to make money?
It's the interesting thing with like these movies that are coming out on the streaming platforms only, like Netflix and stuff. It's like, I wonder how they are making money, because you're drifting away in space.
My back hurts. I'm stretching my back. I'm sorry.
Well, because I guess the idea is that if you have a movie like that, it'll drive people to subscribe to your platform, because it's not like people are buying movie tickets, which is how they make tons of money in the theater. I mean, it's people you have to get people to subscribe.
Yeah, it's a slow drip instead of a big wave of gushy money all at once. They're just gonna have to deal with that. Like that, the movie industry is just like was gone. I don't even know if it's gonna come back in a normal fashion. Like
I mean, can
you even go to movies? Can I go to the movies now? I haven't even tried. I don't even know if I want to.
The theaters around here are open. They have like limited seating and stuff, because I think they separate
like every
people.
Other seat.
Yeah.
But
I haven't gone to the movies in over a year. I mean,
I haven't either.
Vanessa and I used to go like weekly. Like it was kind of like our Friday thing. We would just go catch a new movie at the theater. So it's been weird not going to the theater for over a year.
Yeah.
Which I think that theaters will come back, because there's something cool about that experience of going to a place and getting to watch a movie on like this big ass screen.
I agree.
But I wouldn't be surprised if.
But what if you never grew up with that? Like younger people who, especially like if you're kind of in your teens right now and you're like, I'll just watch it at home, or I'll invite my friends over, or I'll have like a digital watch party, where you're all watching online or something. I could see it, like, because I think that the movie experience might be just nostalgic. Like I enjoyed it. I enjoy going to it. And there is, obviously a high quality of experience. The television, which is not a TV, is huge. The audio is amazing. And that's, hard to replicate at home. But for the most part, other than meeting friends and having dinner beforehand and all that stuff that was accompanying it, I don't know. I think as a kind of date, it's it makes a lot of sense because it's a public place and you can do something fun. But like, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's not just because I grew up with it that I want to go.
Well, see, I didn't really go to the movies that much when I was a kid, because my family was dirt poor. So it was like every once in a while we would go to the movies, and it was like a special cool treat or whatever. But it wasn't until over the last maybe 6 or 7 years that we started going on like a really regular basis. But even for me, I think that there's like some movies you just want to see in the theater, like if it's like a big visual spectacle movie, like those like the Marvel movies, for example, or like these big visual feast for the eyes, and so that it's like you kind of want to watch them in the theater. But something that's like a slow burn, or it's like something like that, I'll just watch at home. I don't need to go out and spend extra money to see this big thing. So I'll be interested to see how theaters come back, because a lot of the streaming platforms like HBO Max, they're like all the Warner Brother movies are coming to that platform when they come to the theaters. So it's like a lot of people are going to have choice if they want to go to the theater.
Like the Harry Potter stuff is all Warner Brothers, I think. So Yeah, that'll be interesting. I might just get HBO Max. I want to get freaking Disney Plus, but I kind of just don't because it's too popular. And I'm like, I don't do stuff as
I think for
popular.
you would get way more out of HBO Max than because I mean, what did you want Disney Plus for?
I want to watch all the Marvel movies again. Like I enjoy most of those movies. I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Those are my favorite. And then Thor Ragnarok and stuff. Those are super fun. I just want to be able to watch them when I want to.
Yeah,
I could just buy the DVDs or whatever, but
because I mean we have Disney.
Because I only
Plus
like some
also,
of them.
but
And then
Disney...
I've sorry.
Because go ahead. Keep going.
I'm just like in my own head. The Mandalorian I've just heard is really good, and I'd be down to watch it, but I'm not going to get the subscription for that. I'd get it for the movies. But I feel like Disney's so rich. I'd rather just try to figure out a way to get them cheaper.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that's
so much money. I'm like,
I only subscribe to Disney Plus for Marvel and Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars more than anything. Like I don't really care about the Disney movies because I'm not a child anymore. But that's why I was curious why you were, because I was like, HBO Max is gonna have like the more mature adult, like focused content as far as movies and TV shows because they have all the HBO catalog and all that stuff. Yeah. And they have a really good selection of movies because it's Warner Brothers. That's like one of the biggest film production companies.
I want to rewatch all the Harry Potters. I have, it's been a long enough time that I feel like I could rewatch them all and enjoy them again. But I own like the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Like that's all I just watch the very end and just go, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember all the stuff that happened.
I wonder how long it'll be before they just remake all the Harry Potter movies. Because I mean, they started like 20 years ago. Yeah, I mean, it was 20 years ago that they made them. So
that's going to be one of those ones where I'm like, these fucking people remaking things and they don't need to. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but they can keep making Harry Potter movies anyway. They don't need to remake those stories. They can just keep making new stories. But
no, actually, maybe they wouldn't.
Those are the main stories. Like they haven't remade Star Wars. I was just gonna say 3, 4, and 5 because the world is so big and there's enough characters. You can just keep making other stories in that world that are roughly. You just steal the formula. Like they could just have, instead of Voldemort, it's like Schmoldemort or whatever. Just have the same
Schmuckamort. And he's just an asshole.
And it's just a big nose instead of no nose. He has a huge nose, and he's Schmuckamort.
Casts all of his spells through his fucking nostrils. He just blows them out like boogers. The magic.
Oh, I'm doing spells now. Schmoldemort, he's a Jew.
That may not go over with the Jewish population so well.
The ones who run Hollywood.
This Schmuckamort's a little anti-Shemitic.
It's anti-Shemitic. Why is it so Shemitic? Oh, God. Oh, Lord. Anyway, why don't we get into our real fucking pleasant topic?
Oh, okay. Just like 40 minutes in?
I have no idea.
Let's get to it.
I didn't have very many plans today, so I'm not paying attention.
No, it's okay.
Last time I had plans to go play video games afterwards, so I was.
That's pretty much all I'm doing.
I had a schedule.
It's just fucking pissing down rain outside.
What game are you gonna play?
I started playing Avengers on the PS5. I played it on the Xbox when it first came out last year, and then the PS5 version came out this week. So it's kind of like a fun, like Vanessa's probably going to be watching something, and so it's like it's one of those games where you can definitely watch a show while you're playing it because it's just sort of a mindless beat 'em up. You just level up, get gear, and it's pretty fun. But there's not really much new stuff to play right now. We're at this time of year where like nothing's coming out.
So right.
It's kind of like replaying some stuff I've already played. Just
Order 1, yeah, for sure. Anyway, we don't have to get into games. That'll be another 40 minutes. So what is our topic this?
Well, we were gonna talk about it last week, but then the other topic, just we spent so much time with it, we decided to wait, and that was suicide. That bleak subject that everybody feels uncomfortable talking about.
Yes, they do.
But it's a fascinating topic. Because I work in behavioral health, and so I deal with lots of people who are expressing suicidal ideation and depression, and so it's kind of like a daily part of my life. And I've known people that have killed themselves, and so it's just one of those topics that I find interesting because I feel like I have a sort of a a take on it that some people don't get along with, and then other people are like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's like sometimes I have to like be careful when I'm talking about it. Some people, because some people get very sensitive about it, especially if they have family or a friend that's killed themselves or something. Like some people can get really uncomfortable really fast trying to talk about it.
Yeah, I think you also have to be a little bit careful when you're talking to people who are uh, susceptible to those types of thinking, and it's important to not to realize that people who are suicidal or affected by suicide are not necessarily thinking of it in an objective, rational, like detached way. And so while you can have like a kind of principled position on it, like I have a a philosophy regarding it, not everybody wants to hear that kind of stuff. They don't want to necessarily hear like how you think of it as a general idea. They want to
hold on one sec. I have a phone call just real quick. No, sorry.
Sure. I'm gonna pause. Resuming.
I never stopped recording, so my raw recording will just have this whole conversation of me talking to the furniture store to buy a couch.
Well, I couldn't hear any of it, so I think you were muted or something.
Anyway, yeah, I muted my mic just so.
For everybody else, sorry, we are back.
It's like we were never gone at all.
We had to pause it for just a moment there, and we were talking about suicide. I guess we're starting to.
Yeah.
You were discussing the fact that you work with mental health patients, and are you in a inpatient or outpatient facility?
It's kind of like a hybrid. So we the patients that we have are coming from the inpatient unit to outpatient, and we're a transitional team. So we kind of see them for a few months in the interim, helping them either just finish getting stabilized and helping them with whatever other like maybe case management needs they need. Like if they need help getting insurance or housing or employment, stuff like that. And then our other objective is to get them set up with long-term outpatient care if that's what they need. So instead of them getting out of our inpatient unit and just getting dropped back off wherever and said, saying, hey, good luck. Good seeing you. It's like we kind of offer them a chance to pursue some further care.
But you have like facilities where people sleep there and live there.
Yeah. Not within the team that I work in, but our inpatient unit does. Yeah.
Or the company you work for does that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the area you're directly working in is more of transitional case management and things.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. So do you work directly with patients? Like, I mean, that's a stupid sentence without more context, but like, you're not a psychologist, but you obviously deal with patients in a kind of administrative way. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I'm an administrative specialist. So
you're like, hey, we'll see you on Tuesday, or your meetings at 4 on Wednesday, or whatever.
Sort of help schedule their appointments, and then I set up like events for them, and then just run like day-to-day office operations and stuff, like supply ordering and all that stuff. So
phone calls,
all that fun stuff. I'm not like in the room doing therapy with them or anything like that.
I wouldn't think so, but you had mentioned that that there are people who are there who deal with suicidal ideation and things like that, but you're not talking about that with them. I assume they don't come up to the counter.
Well, sometimes you do, because sometimes people call and they're freaked out and they don't know where to go or what to do, and so you do have to spend some time kind of talking to them.
Yeah. So you don't want to just be like, okay, calm down, Hank. I'm getting somebody who gives a shit.
Your problems aren't real. Chill out.
your problems they're all in your head. Shut the fuck up. Calm down. Oh, that's terrible. That would not be helpful.
No. It'd probably be really jarring for them, because I feel like they're probably expecting some empathy from you, and then if you're just like, I don't know, tough titties,
well, who knows? Sorry. I mean, if they're paranoid, they might be expecting exactly that, and then when they hear it, they're like, they confirm their own paranoia, and they're like, yeah, everybody's trying to fucking get me, and fuck you. Never know. But do you have training directly related to how to talk to patients that are manic or
psychotic? Yeah, we have like required de-escalation trainings that we go to and stuff like that.
Mostly about being calm and about being listening, I would imagine. Sorry, I don't want to tell you how it is.
No,
just saying what I
a
think.
lot of it's just us getting them to just calm down enough while we're finding like an actual professional to sit down with them and help them. Because sometimes people come in and they're just in a really heightened state for one reason or another.
Sure.
And so it's a lot of it's just kind of getting them to get to a state where they can at least take a seat and just breathe for a second while you work on finding them someone.
And letting them know that you're not trying to fight them. You're not against them.
Yeah,
you're trying to help. I'm here. I'm a friend. You know, calm the fuck down. No, that's not good.
Luckily I've only ever had like one person like take a swing at me, kind of where like they were that like just physically aggressive.
Do you ever deal? Do you have any training, or do you ever deal with what is it called, where you physically restrain? I think it's just restraint training, where you would stop someone who is attacking someone or hurting themselves.
Well, we don't have any training with that, because like they don't want us to get involved in like a physical altercation at all. It'd be more like just separating yourself from them.
Maybe get security
and contacting security. Yeah, we have like duress buttons at all of our desks and stuff.
Sure.
So security will get over there within a couple of minutes usually.
Yeah, I guess that's more of a orderly type job. Orderlies tend to have to, or nurses, people who are directly working with people pre and during and post medications and things like that. Anyway, do you want to talk about certain statistics about suicide, or do you have a particular
I think story? Looking at some statistics is good, and then we can maybe look at the more philosophical, because you said you had a very how did you put it? You have a very like specific stance on it, right?
Well, I have my own opinions about suicide personally, and as a legal concept, like the fact that it's illegal to try to kill yourself. But we can talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to look? Do you have so I have the stats pulled up for just it looks like just the US, which is from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So I don't know if we just want to kind of focus on the US, or if you wanted to look at it from like a full the whole world.
I think we should focus on the US, and I think that's good. The only I've got a couple of things which is by state, some suicide rates by state. That doesn't really tell us a ton, but and then I've got a list of suicide rates by country, just to get an idea of what some of the kind of best or worst issues are in the world, because America is not the only place that deals with suicide. So I just thought, spoiler alert, people are killing themselves all over the place. But yeah, just talk about US, maybe like what are the rates, and break it down, and then maybe like you were talking about the how people are doing it.
Oh yeah, well, so suicide it's the 10th leading cause of death in the US. And then so the stats, these stats are from 2019, and so in 2019 47,500 Americans died by suicide. 1.38 million attempted suicide. So I mean, there's a huge amount of people who attempt it, but definitely, luckily, I guess, depending on how you look at it, not a lot of people are actually successful, because out of 1.38 million, only 47.5 actually succeeded.
Sure.
And then 70%, or just under 70, it's 69.38% of suicides are white males, which is interesting. Like that specific demographic is the one that's.
Is that the people who actually committed suicide?
Yeah, this is like actual suicide deaths. So
what
basically,
what's the breakdown for attempts?
The attempts? I don't know. Let's see.
It might not have that.
It's it just has like the rate of suicide is the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged white men, and then in 2019 men died by suicide 3.63 times more often than women. On average, it's 130 suicides per day in the US, and then 50.39%, so about half of the suicides are by firearm.
I wonder if the fact that men are killing themselves and the fact that firearms are involved is related, because I feel like firearms are more kind of male preoccupation, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And males tend to be, when they do commit suicide, it tends to be something in the kind of like violent realm like that, I would think.
Well, and according to the National Survey of Drug Use and Mental Health data, adult females actually attempt suicide 1.5 times more than males. So women attempt suicide at a higher rate than males. They just don't succeed as obviously as much, considering 3.5 times the amount of men are actually being successful in their attempts. They don't have like a breakdown of different ways that people attempt it, but I'm guessing you mostly is probably, I bet you a lot of the other ones attempts are probably drug related.
I wonder if they consider an OD a suicide attempt, like if they don't know otherwise.
Because that would be interesting, because there are people who just OD on accident, and then obviously the people who do it intentionally.
I bet a lot of people lump it all into it. Yeah, I bet a lot of people aren't intentionally trying to kill themselves, but they're also not intentionally trying to live. Like when they do OD, they're just trying to use the drug as much as they can physically handle, and then they just do it too much, and they're like, "Fuck it, I don't care either way." I don't know. That's I'm sure a lot of it is drug related. I don't know what other types of suicides there are that, if you jump out of a moving car, that could be considered a suicide attempt. I don't think people are hanging themselves super often anymore. I don't know. It's kind of disturbing to think about anyway. People are attempting suicide all the time. I'm guessing it's mostly with pills or something of that nature, because that's one of the ones where you can get your stomach pumped, you end up at the hospital, you can live through. So I don't know.
And I feel like a lot of people probably just don't take enough too, because a lot of times with pills, you gotta take a lot of them in order for it to actually kill you. I mean,
well, and I'm sure some of them have, like, at a certain point you pass out. If you take a certain types of drugs, you pass out and you can't administer more.
Yeah. Well, and your body will, try to expel them anyway. So I could imagine passing out, and then, you're sort of
true.
In a daze, you're just throwing it all up anyway.
Yeah.
So, because your body wants to live. It's the
I wonder,
prime directive is to
I wonder how many
alive.
people do drink too much alcohol to try to kill themselves. I bet that's possible, because if you're already drinking a lot, and then you have a high tolerance, and then you're like, one day you're like, I'm just going to drink until it's done, and just keep drinking. That's I'm sure something people do.
Yeah. And then, so what stats did you have? Because those are all the ones that it was just kind of like a blanket pull up of the US, but you said you had a further breakdown by like state, and then
so by state, the highest rates are from Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, New Mexico, and Colorado, which are all well, other than New Mexico, I'm trying to think of what these places have in common. They're all pretty small states as far as population, especially Alaska. They don't have a huge population.
Loneliness.
Yeah, maybe loneliness. I know in Alaska there's an issue with seasonal affective disorder, at least the issue with not having enough sun and not getting enough vitamin D, which I know can play a role in mood. It might be that people who live in those areas are getting away from people, and in doing that, like, there's a propensity of those people who are trying to get away from people who are already depressed. Like, they're like, maybe that's one of the reasons why they're over there. I don't know. I don't want to try to speculate too much. And I think it's interesting, because I would think that living in a very largely populated area would be somewhat conducive to that, because of the stress of, dealing with other people and trying to find jobs. And but maybe just being around other people is not the factor. It's more internal. I was trying to see where Oregon is on this list, and
I know Lane County, specifically in Oregon, has a really high suicide rate, like one of the worst counties in like all of the U.S. Because we have like pamphlets about it and stuff. Like for whatever reason, like this particular county is really bad.
Oregon is 1, 2, 3, 9th on the list of worst.
Is that like number one being the worst? So it's
number one is Wyoming, and then number 9 down the list for worst. And then
it's like the top 20th percentile then out of all 50 states.
Yeah, California isn't as bad. New York isn't as bad either. And those are really big populated areas.
Is it just basing it on total suicide deaths, or is it suicide deaths per capita kind of thing? Or?
It's rate, per capita.
Okay. Well, that might be why like California probably has a lot more suicides, but there's so many people that the percentage
goes down. Yeah, it does have a lot of in the total number of suicides per year.
Yeah, because I know like Los Angeles alone has like a population of like 12 or 13 million, which is 4 times the entire state of Oregon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 4 times the people live in one city in California than a whole state. So I could see that being why. Maybe that might be why some of like Alaska does not have a very big population. So
exactly. Yeah.
You wouldn't need a lot of suicide deaths necessarily to qualify in a really upper echelon of percentile.
I think that's true. And I don't know what kind of makes more sense to focus on is the total number of people. I would think kind of you'd want to look at exactly where those people are. Like by state doesn't necessarily help if everybody in one, all those deaths are coming from one city because it's tons of poverty in that city maybe, as opposed to like all spread out throughout the state.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, I'm guessing, Portland metro area, Lane County, Multnomah County, if you look at that population, it's the majority of the state anyway. So it's more likely that you're going to get the suicides are going to be in that area.
Yeah.
And then I was also looking at it by country, and the one that is on the worst per capita is Guyana, and then Lesotho, which is in Africa.
Oh, okay.
Guyana is in South America. Russia, Lithuania, Suriname. Ivory Coast in Africa, Kazakhstan, Equatorial Guinea is in Africa, Belarus, South Korea, and then America is 34th on the list of worst. So it's not the worst, but it's definitely not the best, I suppose.
Does it give any data as to why like some of those places are like so high? Yeah, because I'm curious if it's like a cultural thing. Like some cultures, suicide's more widely accepted.
This is Wikipedia, like so it's straight up data. I'm sure that there's articles on like culture and suicide. I have not looked into that because it's almost like taken for granted that like a suicide wouldn't be something that would be promoted in any culture, because it's at least not like you wouldn't survive evolutionarily if you had a major culture around suicides. Even if you have a death related culture, it's usually not you killing yourself, it'd be other people sacrificing you.
Well, I mean, like not necessarily like there's a culture around like 37 time to die.
Gotta go.
Like I like typically, because I was thinking like Japan, for instance, would be higher because they have such a high like moral honor sort of code and system, and it's like, if you bring a lot of shame upon yourself or your family, they'll, harakiri is a thing that exists for a reason, not necessarily that it's used a lot now, but I mean, that's like a culture where it's like, if you've done something horrible and there's no redeeming yourself other than just ending your own life. And so I don't know if it was like a cultural thing or if it's like a quality of life thing. I know some African countries, their quality of life is not great. So I could see maybe suicide being higher because people just can't take it.
I think it's definitely like a perception of hope. Like if you're heading toward and you're progressing toward some goal and you feel like you can get there, then you have hope and you will want to stay alive. And if you see no hope in the progress of your life and there's no outcome that's going to be positive, then I don't see why suicide wouldn't be on your mind. So I think in places where the living conditions are terrible, what hope do you have to continue and to have kids and to do things that are positive? Whereas and then that also has a cultural aspect, because your culture sort of can lead you toward creating your goals. If your goals are to make enough money to support a family and you live in a place where you don't think that's going to happen for you because it's not happening for your demographic or something, then I could see that happening. So even if the living conditions are relatively decent, you're in a first world country, but you don't see any hope. I also think obviously it's chemical, it's internal psychology. It's not all in genetics and stuff like that. So I'm sure that like if you're already predisposed toward anxiety and neuroticism and negative thoughts, and then you also live in a place that's fucking horrible, like that's just going to push you over that edge. And I think that people are born with predispositions toward resilience and predispositions toward hopelessness, and your environment is going to have a big effect on that. You can have maybe a child who's kind of a little more nervous, a little more worried, but if you put them in a situation that has a ton of positivity and hope, that's kind of offsetting that propensity. And then the opposite, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think it's a mixture. I also think it's interesting because religions have notions of afterlives, and certain religions, if you commit suicide, you can't go to heaven, and that's Christianity. Whereas I don't know what the major religion is in something like Japan or Russia, where maybe that's not. Maybe committing suicide has no long-term, like maybe they don't believe in a heaven or they don't believe in a hell. So that's not a factor. I'm not sure what that looks like. Obviously in America, Christianity is declining. And so maybe that has a very mild effect on the perception of suicide, because, I could see it being a very mild kind of stopper for people who want to commit suicide, but like they also want to go to heaven. But I guess if you're feeling so negative, maybe you don't give a shit about heaven at that point. Like you're like, this is obviously hell, so what does it matter? Like what am I even talking about?
If you're at that point of seriously contemplating it, I don't think you're in that you're obviously not a positive mindset to be worried about heaven.
Yeah, probably not. So I guess it's kind of a moot point to even introduce that as an issue. It's kind of a slap in the face to people who are sad to say, well, you're not going to heaven because you're fucking sad and you wanted to die. Like, oh, thanks.
This is God testing you.
Thanks, God, for not giving a shit about my pain and not helping me. Like, you're gonna make me feel pain and you could stop it, but also I can't go to heaven.
Exactly.
What a bummer.
Yeah, you gotta suffer. You gotta suffer to the bitter end.
Bummer ass religion. Anyway,
so
yeah, I don't know. It's it's not good. I'm curious what suicide rates look like over time, because I would like if it's just a natural state of humanity that people are at a certain rate going to be committing suicide, then it's hard to look at circumstances and point to effects or causes, I should say. Like if our society is increasing that situation, or if it's just there's a huge population, and so our interaction with that is going to be more apparent because it's we just have more people. If it's always 1% of people or 0.01% of people, no matter what timeline you look at, then it's hard to have any hope that you're going to get that number down.
Yeah.
come up with some solutions, because then it's like, well, we don't even know why people are doing it. Like we can come up with these reasons, but it's just inevitable. Which,
well, I know with
I
like
don't
the
think it's true,
rise in social media has kind of caused like a spike, especially among younger, preteen, teen, just because of
younger folks. Yeah.
Instead of
Well,
just
there's a lot
being
of bullying and a lot of judgment.
instead of just being bullied at school only, now it's school, and then anytime you're on the internet with a
Well, and
social
you're
media
also
account.
like, if you're seeing all these really successful people all the time and you feel like that's the norm, which it isn't. It's not the norm for people to be famous and rich. The vast majority of people are middle class and probably a little bit under that. And but you're not seeing those people celebrating things online, and so you're like, well, I'm never going to get to this ideal state. And plus other hormonal issues going on at that time, I imagine.
Yeah, well, it's a fragile stage, like you said, with
Yeah,
puberty. The
your
hormones are all over the
self-identity
place.
is being
Well,
formed, and you're trying to figure out if you have any hope in succeeding, and you don't really even know what that means. So
yeah, and the other thing about social media is like how many people are posting on their account, like their day-to-day normal lives. Like people are going to be posting things when they're on vacation or when some cool thing, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, I think, fabricate their posts to make it seem like their life is far more exciting or
no.
successful than it is. And so, like you said, people are just looking at all these really, like, everybody's life just seems awesome on
Yeah.
social media. And so you look at that and then you review your own life, and it just compounds the issue.
Comparing yourselves to other people is not
The worst thing you can do.
it's not good. It's good. It's good to have like aspirations and look at other people as good role models, and but that should be something that drives you toward action to do better things, not to give you no hope that you can ever do that. That's why some things seem so unattainable. Like, I can never attain what that person has done, because you probably can't, but you can attain other things that are amazing and great, and don't have to be so specific to that other person. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that society can I just don't know, like, people don't really control society. Like, we kind of act like we should be able to, but we don't really have control over it. We have control over certain decisions and certain behaviors and certain institutions. But even after an institution is created, like public schools, like that system is like ingrained and in place, and it would take a lot to like revamp it and make it more psychology friendly. And over time, I think that people work on that kind of stuff, but it's very difficult to change things for the better, for for reasons of happiness. Not that that's necessarily the goal. Happiness and joy and things like that are nice, but I think stability and contentment might be better goals, in that's kind of the majority of a normal life, is not of peaks and valleys. It's of the middle road, being okay with the middle parts of life. Because
that's a hard thing to because we, especially in America, everybody wants to be fucking successful and popular and make lots of money and
independent.
So it's like this idea of just being happy with that middle road of just being at least comfortable and somewhat successful, I think it's like a train of thought I think a lot of people don't even have. They're either at their lowest or they're shooting for the stars. People just can't settle. At least most people, seemingly.
But also I think that's a necessary aspect of like youth, is ambition. At some point, like you have this energy and you want to make more and you want to do more, and some of that existential angst as a young person is that you really feel like you can, like, you're going to do more. I'm going to accomplish something in my life, and you don't know how to get there and what to do and how to spend your time. And you need kind of a ignorant hope to actually do those things, to really like to go spend 6 years in school and become a lawyer or a doctor or a scientist or something. And you don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. And so your nervousness about the future is warranted. And it's not like you shouldn't be perfectly happy with all of that existential angst, but you also should realize that that's normal, and that's that ignorance and anxiety will hopefully fade as you become more experienced and more self-aware. You'll be able to kind of, I don't know, hopefully navigate life in a way that's not so unpredictable. You're, no matter what path you're on, it gets more predictable as you get more experience. And the unpredictable part is really fucking scary. And especially like when you leave high school, you just have no idea what real life is or what adult life is like.
Well, and part of the thing too is that, like, I mean, I think a lot of children like are told by their parents and teachers and other people who help raise them that like you're special and you can do anything that you want. And so I feel like that sort of almost starts to feed into this unreality of what's probably going to happen, because yes, there, I mean, realistically you could do just about anything that you want, but the probability of you succeeding at anything you want is astronomically lower. And so I feel like some people, they build up this idea in their head and then they realize that it's not realistically attainable. And so I feel like that just feeds into the cycle, because then you feel like you're not living up to your potential, that you're a waste of space.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that was something that I struggled with writing, is it's like it'd be awesome to be a big successful writer and make millions of dollars and be very popular and find all this success with it. But it's like, I'm still writing and I still put books out, but like the probability of finding that level of success is so slim, because there's millions of people doing it. Like, it's tricky because we all have to accept that we are individuals, but that at the same time we're also just very tiny cogs in this fucking huge ass machine that's life. Like there's literally billions of us on the planet. And so I feel like some people just get so lost in that shuffle. You're trying to stand out, you're trying to find your place, but really there's just so much going on all around you that it can become overwhelming really quickly, especially if you have big aspirations. I think some people who dream more realistically probably have a better sense of stability. I think that's why you find like the more artistic people, or famous actors and musicians, like a lot of them have drug problems, and a lot of in like there are these seemingly famous people who are happy that kill themselves. Like Anthony Bourdain, I guess, is like a somewhat more recent example. I mean, that's a guy who was paid to essentially travel the world and just try different foods, and like the regular person looks at it like, well, how the fuck could you be sad doing that? That's amazing. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's I'm starting to lose track of where I'm going with this, but anyway, I think just accepting, part of the problem is that we don't accept the reality that we're in the grand scheme not important to anybody but ourselves and like those closest to us. Like somebody in a different state that's never met you doesn't give a shit about you, whether you live or die or exist at all. And so I think that sometimes our dreams just get so big that it's bigger than our presence could ever be in the world. And it can be kind of intimidating, I think, for a lot of people when they think that they should be more successful or popular or something than they really are.
Sure. Well, and different models of like what you should expect out of life. And if you're watching a lot of TV and art and things, you have, expectations of being the hero and being the alpha or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not most people's reality.
Yeah.
It's
I
fun to watch because it's nice, but it's not.
And I
real.
kind of meant for it to sort of tie into like that social media side of things. Like people are seeing all this stuff happening in the world, and they think, like you were saying, that they think that that's how life is for everybody, and it's not. No. If we were all that successful, it would be insanity, because there are so many of us. It's impossible. So how do you? So my view on suicide really is like, I feel like it's it's a sad thing, right? Like when somebody is in a state where they decide that they want to end their own life, that they've exhausted all of their options, that the only thing that they can do to find peace is to just end their own life. And so it's like on the base level, that's sad that somebody has essentially devalued their life to the point that it shouldn't exist anymore. But then at the same time, I look at it as that's that person's right to, it's their life, like how you were made the comment earlier that it's illegal to kill yourself. It's like, well, I mean, I view it, I guess, in the same lens of like our discussion last week with the decriminalization of drugs. It's like, I think we both pretty much agree that most drugs should just be legal. It's your choice. It's your, as long as you're not bothering other people with your actions, like who cares what you're doing to yourself as long as it's only troubling you. And so it's kind of how I view suicide. It's like if I would always encourage somebody to seek help and to not just immediately jump to suicide is your solution. But I've definitely met people, especially in my line of work, that their lives are awful and they've tried getting help for years and they just can't escape, whatever is ailing them. And so like we've had clients who've committed suicide, and I feel like, and then I find myself, I'm like, am I sad that they killed themselves, or am I just like sad for the people around them because they're not around? Because that person who's killed themselves now has no problems anymore. Like they don't exist anymore. Like all their troubles are now actually gone for them. The people who bear the burden are the people that they leave behind. And so it's a tricky thing where I kind of understand why some people choose to kill themselves, because I'm like, well, some people, so a friend of mine who killed himself, this was years ago. I worked with him, and he was somebody who he used to be an alcoholic. And then, with the help of his wife, he in AA and these programs, like he in religion, like he joined like a church. And so he was able to kind of get himself out of this alcoholism problem, which was stemmed from depression. Like he was drinking to make himself feel better, which a lot of alcoholics do. It's like self-medicating basically. But he managed to escape that and was doing really well. He was like, a happy guy. He saw a counselor. He took antidepressants. He didn't drink anymore. He attended AA meetings regularly and just loved his wife. Well, while I was working with him, his wife, at least seemingly kind of out of nowhere, like they kind of were having some problems. Well, anyway, she basically like left him and then kicked him out of the house. And then, he just spiraled into like a depression. And I remember like hanging out with him outside of work and stuff, and like, just trying to talk to him and spend some time with him. And then like he just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And he ended up shooting himself. And it was just, I was upset at the time, but I realized I was more upset because I felt bad that he didn't feel like he had any other choice. But then, as time has separated me from that event, and I've kind of like thought back on it, I'm like, I understand why he did it, because this was somebody whose whole life was almost like hinged on this relationship with this woman. She helped him get out of this horrible situation he'd been in before, and then suddenly left him. And now he was just single and alone. And, I just kind of, I guess, empathize with him. I suddenly realized like, well, maybe he was at this point where he was already seeking help. He was already, taking the antidepressants and doing the things that we're all told that we should try to do when we're feeling depressed all the time. And he just was so morose and couldn't get out of it. And so it's like, in a way, I almost started to be happy for him. I'm like, well, he obviously found peace that he just could not find while he was alive by ending his own life. And it was sad in that, I went to his funeral, and you sat in this giant room full of people who are just upset and crying that he's gone. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but now he is okay now. Like this was his solution to this problem that he just couldn't find any other way. So it's a weird way to look at it, because I can understand why some people, I mean, I've seen clients that are homeless, and they're just addicted to drugs. They can't get a job, they can't get clean or stay sober for very long, and they're just dealing with all this stuff, and it's like eventually they end up killing themselves. And sometimes I'm just like, well, I mean, I guess what's the value of your life? The only person that can determine that is you. Some people are like, oh, they had so much to live for. And I'm like, well, do you know that for a fact? Because how do you determine the value of somebody else's life? The only value you can really place is in your own. You're the one that knows what, what your goals, hopes, and dreams are, and what you want to get out of life. And so it's like it's a weird thing when people are like, oh, they had so much to live for. And I'm just like, well, maybe they didn't, because they obviously didn't feel that way. You're placing a value on their life that they obviously didn't have. And so how are we to determine what the value of anybody's life is and whether or not they should choose to end it if they're in a place that they feel is completely hopeless? So it's like, I guess basically what I'm saying is that, like, suicide should never be your first answer, but also if you've literally exhausted everything in your life and you just cannot escape this, and like that is like your only piece, then I feel like it should be okay for that person to make that decision. It's their life. If they want to choose to end it and they don't think that there's anything else that they can do, I mean, it is the final solution to any problem that you could really have by just not existing anymore. The burden is left to the people, that you leave behind. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from killing themselves, is when they realize, oh God, if I'm gone, like, who's going to raise my kids? Who's going to care for my elderly parents or my other loved ones? Or, how is my wife going to pay for all the bills if I'm not, she doesn't have my source of income anymore? And so I don't know. Sorry. It's a really, that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's a really complicated subject. Because sometimes I'll talk to people about it, and the moment I say, hey, it should be okay for somebody to make that decision, people are like, whoa, what? No, suicide should never be okay. And I'm like, well, but picture it this way. If you were homeless, couldn't get a job anywhere because maybe you have like a criminal history, or something that like stops people, for like most places, from hiring you, and you literally just exist on the street, freezing to death and hungry all the time, and you're trying all these different avenues, and maybe you're going somewhere and still getting counseling, and you're on some kind of antidepressant, and just none of that's working, and you're just literally stuck in this rut that you feel like you can't get out of. Like, who's to, if that's really where you're at the rock bottom and you can't get out of it, then who's to say that your life is so valuable that you should continue just living that existence? Like, again, you're the one that looks at the value of your own life. And if I'm the kind of person, I think if I was in that situation, I would probably kill myself, only because I just know myself. Like, if I didn't have stability, like on the level of having a job and a home, like the idea of imagining being homeless and just like never knowing where I'm going to get my next meal or where I'm going to sleep and all, like, that terrifies me, where I'm like, yeah, I'd probably just kill myself if I literally if I felt like I had no escape out of that situation, because that's just like too overwhelming for me, even just thinking about it. But it's an interesting thing, because it sort of goes against like our body's very basic instinct, which is to fucking carry on and survive for as long as we can. Like we were saying with the example of like people who take a lot of pills, they probably end up throwing them up because the body voluntarily is going to expel something that's damaging it. So it's like you're going against your own nature too. It's like your head against your body kind of thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm just going on and on and on about this.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm interested to hear. I think that part of the issue with talking about suicide is that suicide is an act that people engage in, but I don't think it is purely rational. And so having a rational conversation about reasons isn't getting to the real point of suicide. The real point of suicide is that it is emotional, and it has to do with very deep felt things that accompany thoughts that are intertwined with thoughts, but aren't completely rational. Kind of like a lot of life isn't really that rational. We just use rationalizations to explain things, like why we do stuff. And a lot of times we actually do things because of instinctual aspects and automatic responses and emotional things and fears and hopes and things. But a lot of times we end up just rationalizing it afterward. Like they killed themselves because they're sad. They killed themselves because they had no hope. They killed themselves because they didn't have a job and all these things. But one of the main reasons that they killed themselves is really because of a feeling that they had inside of them that was so distressing and so emotionally negative that the act of getting rid of that feeling was super important and super, like, that became the goal, was to end that feeling. And that's why it's very difficult to relate to, because that emotional and subjective experience is personal, and you just don't get to tell them how they feel and what their you know what thoughts are maybe either supporting those feelings or not supporting them. A lot of times, you can help with those types of things with changing the mind of the person and giving them some hope. But a lot of times it's chemical and it's hormonal, and it's not purely rational. It's, you have no dopamine in your system, and there's literally no pleasant feelings, or you have no, your serotonin levels are super low. You have, your system just is not producing the neurotransmitters that most people get, and so it's totally not your fault, and it's not the fault of your job or anything like that. Like, tons of people don't have jobs, tons of people are living on, with horrible circumstances, and the vast majority of people don't end up killing themselves. So I think that's definitely like an evolutionary thing. It's a physical thing. We're not geared toward that end result. We're geared toward staying alive. We're geared toward pushing past those feelings and dealing with pain and dealing with negative things. And I'm sure people, but suicide is there for behind the scenes for a lot of people as far as thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I feel like probably most people contemplate it at least once in their life at some point when they're at a particular low. I mean, I've definitely been there multiple times in my life. And I mean, I struggled a lot through like my 20s of just like trying to figure out what the fuck I was even doing with my life. And that would sometimes just spiral into this, this deep depression where I'm like, I can just not worry about any of this anymore with like one move, like there's like a, sometimes like almost a weird comfort that comes with it. It's not so much that I'm sad. It's just like, if I do this, I just don't have to worry about any of this anymore. Like it's done. Like all that's just wiped away. Which is then is comforting and scary in equal measure. And then usually it's like you think about that later when you're more rational thinking, and you're like, oh my God, like, why was I going down that path? That's an extreme, because it is an extreme path. It's like one of those paths that once you commit to it and you're dead. I mean, you can't change your mind after you've pulled the trigger with the gun in your mouth. Like it's over usually at that point. So I think that's also why when we were looking at these stats, you have, almost 1.5 million people a year attempt suicide, but only 47,500 actually succeed. And that's what, maybe like 1 or 2% or something like that. It's a very low percentage of people attempted versus actual success. I think it's go ahead. I was gonna say, I think because people, it's a lot of people get to that point where they're like, this is it. Like I'm ready. And then, when I think there's a difference in feeling it and then actually sitting there about to do it. And then I think the finality of that is probably hits people and they suddenly realize, oh Jesus, like no, I can't do this.
And I think it's also, a lot of it is not about dying. It's about ending pain. It's not about like ending, it's not necessarily that they're like, I don't want to exist and I want to cause all this pain to my friends and family. It's that they just need something. They just need to turn it off. It doesn't matter if they end up dying or not. It's just about turning off the switch, not necessarily permanently. So it's like you just take a bunch of pills and you just say fuck it, and you don't. It's not like a rational, okay, what is going to kill my body immediately, and that would be typically a gun. And so if you really are like, I don't know, I don't really know that. I've had suicidal thoughts in the past, and I got super depressed for a while. And I had someone I could reach out to at that point and help me. And I knew that I didn't want to actually do it, so I didn't attempt it. But I don't know. It might be not the most useful thing to talk about, like the mode in which it's done. And then, so if I can just switch up the
no, that's right.
conversation a little bit, but I was going to add the kind of idea of it being illegal. And I think that obviously it doesn't matter if it's illegal if somebody kills himself. They're not going to prison.
Yes, if they're dead.
The reason that it's illegal is because people need a legal justification to intervene. And so the fact that they are a danger to themselves or others in a legal sense allows people to intervene. Now it's the intervening that you can talk about as being either moral or immoral or justified or not. And I think that the problem with somebody who's having suicidal thoughts is that just like when you are taking care of a child or you're dealing with a mentally ill person, we kind of define that in a way that kind of takes away their responsibility. And so while we should have sovereignty over ourselves and our bodies, and we should be able to be somewhat, I'm libertarian about that, like taking drugs and stuff. There is a certain point at which you can, whether it's right or wrong, where you say that person is no longer in their right mind. They don't get to make that decision. They don't know what they're doing. Even if they say, I want to die, people will still say, I don't care. I don't believe you. You don't know what that means, and I'm going to stop you. And whether that's for selfish purposes because they don't want them to die, I think that's a lot of what that has to do with.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's also like this, like we want to take care of people. We want to keep people from dying. There's a major instinct to stop people from killing themselves. And even if they end up living this horrible life, we still put such a value on life in and of itself, regardless of the quality of life. And not everyone does that. I think that that's a complicated discussion. And I think that if we had a more honest expressions about, life, that death wouldn't be such a problem, like where, like, I mean, everyone's going to die. It's, we have a weird relationship in different cultures with death. And so like we have these like really taboo conversations about, abortion and of suicide. And there are different ways of dealing with it. But ultimately, if somebody, wants to commit suicide, that's a personal act. You can't stop them physically, unless you physically put them into a room and a straitjacket and such things.
Well, and like in my experience too, is like if somebody is dedicated to it, like if they are, they're hell bent on, they're gonna do it. There's nothing you can do to stop them. I mean, and usually they're people who they're the people that aren't talking about it or saying it or threatening it. Like we have a lot of clients who threaten suicide a lot, and every single one of them that has actually committed suicide in the time that I've been working at this place were people who weren't talking about it at all. Sure. Like literally we get a phone call, and sometimes it like blows us away, like we didn't see it come. Like, some people you can kind of see it coming because of their struggles, and then other people it's like you're like, wait, what? Like this person, what was going on? And it's like, so it's an interesting thing because it's I think some people, they use the suicide threat as kind of like a whistleblowing kind of thing, where it's like they're just sort of doing it because they know that like if they call us and say that they want to kill themselves, that we have to pay attention to that and we have to help them, And so we definitely have seen clients who kind of use that as unfortunately like a kind of almost a method for getting some attention, because they know that the moment that they say something like that, we are going to dedicate that full attention to them and help them in any way that we can. The people that really want to do it and are at that place where they're ready to do it, they don't fucking say anything about it. They'll just do it. And so it's and like I said, in a way I understand why they're doing it. it's their choice and everything. But then you do feel bad for anybody that they're leaving behind, any family members and stuff, because suicide inherently is like one of the most selfish things you can do. You're literally removing yourself from the entire equation and then leaving everybody else in that wake, basically.
It's interesting. It's interesting because the idea that it's selfish is weird to me, because
it's selfish, but then it's also selfish for you to not want somebody to kill themselves, because usually you don't want them to, because it's like I wouldn't want my wife to kill herself because I fucking love her and I need her around. Like but at the same time, if she was at this point in her life where like that was the only thing that she felt like she could do, it's weird to ask that person to not do it because of your own reasons.
What it is it kind of highlights the kind of subconscious social world and the subconscious social connections that we have, because it's almost like we're not separate, because we're being selfish in that we find value in the other person. But the other person is also being selfish because they don't find value in themselves, and they're like, I'm a drain on everyone, I'm a downer, I suck, I'm making everything worse. So they're trying to help the community by dying. And because we're so communal, it's almost like the suicide of one person, because it affects so many other people, is like a suicide of yourself. It's like you're losing a bit of yourself, because we do create identities around other people. Our identity is typically not isolated. We're not the type of animal that is on their own their whole life. They have kids and then their kids leave and then they're on their own the rest of their life. We're highly dependent on each other. It's just not, it's not the case that you are an island unto yourself. You affect other people. Now, there are certain circumstances where people are completely alone and no one cares about them. And feeling that way is part of probably why you don't care that it's selfish, because you feel like no one cares. But if you know people care and you want to do it anyway, you're probably thinking that this is better for everyone. It's like, why should, so it's like, selfishness almost shouldn't even be the reason that it shouldn't really be the word that we use, because we're always all selfish and communal. There's always the back and forth because of our species and our evolution, that we're always kind of part of a group and independent. And we need to find the balance between those two things, because there's very little that you can do on your own, and being alone is like the worst thing in the world. Like isolation in prison is one of the worst things you can do to somebody, is to put them by themselves. Obviously there's other reasons why that sucks, because you're in a little room and you don't get sunlight and you're not on your own. But I think that for mental health reasons, support networks are the like a huge factor. And that's what's interesting about places like where you work at, is those are for people who kind of don't have much of a support network, and you are facilitating that. And that's what's keeping a lot of them alive and away from drugs, and continuing to potentially be having better lives. And it's interesting to even like think that they should, like, why does anybody care about other people's lives? And I think it's because we're empathetic. It's because we're not just ourselves. We think about other people and we put ourselves in other people's positions all the time. We're always considering other people's perspectives, unless we're a sociopath.
I was saying, unless you're a sociopath.
But that's super rare. But that's like kind of like one of the like downsides of being a human is like other people's pain sucks. And a lot of times we want to distance ourselves from other people. That's why we don't want to talk about suicide and mental illness, because we don't want to have those negative emotions ourselves. We want to just, be trudging along in our path, but we can't get away from the way we feel about others, even if we don't know them particularly well. We're always putting ourselves in their position, or at least, I think that that's what's occurring. Maybe there's something else going on, but it's interesting because we find value in people we don't even know who commit suicide. We're like, well, or we want to detach from it and come up with these rationalities and things like that. But where, you know, a lot of it is just straight up emotional responses to these things. And it's hard to say whether, you know, whether it's good or bad to do to stop somebody, or to commit suicide, to stop someone from doing it, you know, is somewhat noble. But if they just go back to hating their life and wanting to die, they're going to try it again, or they're going to, you know, do something even worse, or they're going to live horribly. It's I guess the real idea would be to prevent it, to figure out what's going on in the body and the brain, and to try to prevent those types of emotional or psychological problems, you know, which is utopian, you know, in I think like a kind of, in both a good and bad way. It's like good to think that we can solve these problems, but it's also super controlling and kind of idealistic, and like what are we gonna do, you know? Like a lot of it is just,
you
like,
can't
control,
babysit people all the time and make sure
like you're not in control of other people, really. You're just not. And you're barely in control of yourself is kind of something I believe, is that, like, just being able to have any amount of control over your own life is super difficult. You're you know, you're always being pushed and pulled in different directions by the environment and your own psychology. And to say that I'm doing something is, I don't know if you really are. Like, you got to be really careful about that. And so to control somebody else for your own notions of righteousness is inevitable. Like, whether it's good or bad, people are going to try to stop people from killing themselves, and they're going to, even if it's just for the moment, because they don't want to be the kind of person that just lets somebody die in front of them.
Well, and that's what I don't think we should ever do. I just mean that, I mean, we should always be encouraging people not to do it, and seeking help and trying to help them. I just mean, like, I understand where, you know, if somebody's, they've just felt like they've exhausted all their options. I mean, I guess ultimately what I would say is that if you feel like you should kill yourself, to seek help, right? To find, whether that's going to counseling or, I mean, we do a lot of like group activity therapy and stuff. Like, sometimes people just need, like you were saying earlier, like, social connections to find some peace and some value. And so it's, you know, you should seek help and try to find the value in your own life, because committing suicide is basically you saying, I have no value and there's nothing I can add to existence, basically. And so I'm going to remove myself from this equation, either through depression or exhaustion. I mean, any number of reasons. So, I mean, I don't want people to listen to us and think that I'm advocating, like, hey, you know, if you're bummed out, you just don't think that anything's worth it, then kill yourself, go for it. It's your choice. I mean, ultimately it is your choice, but it should be like your dead also last option. Like,
if you're gonna pretend like you have choices in the world, then don't pretend like death is your only choice.
No,
that
exactly,
is not accurate. You are not. That's not true. It is like something that we all have some amount of control over, where we put our bodies and what we do with our bodies. But you also have a million other choices. You could go for a run every time you feel like shit. You could, you know, go, you know, seek help through the state. There's lots of different things you can do. And it's hard because, you know, different people are in different circumstances. Different people have access to different support teams and or support networks, even just their own activities that they can do. Some people, you know, if you're homeless, you're probably not listening to this podcast. So, you know, giving advice is difficult. Like telling someone that they can kill themselves is not going to make people kill themselves. That's not how it works. People are going to kill themselves because they fucking really believe that it is worse to be alive. And that takes a lot. That is not a simple act of thought-provoking rationality. It's kind of like a revolution in a country. Like, the people revolt when it's worse to not revolt, because revolution requires death and horrible circumstances and economic collapses, right? Like an actual bloody revolution in a country.
Mm-hmm.
And it, you know, it in order to it's just an interesting thing. I just promote my own thing here real quick. Is I wrote a blog article called Talking About Suicide, which is it's not really about the same thing we're talking about now. It's literally just a contemplation of why people do and do not discuss the topic. And I just go over it's just a lot of questions, like, you know, like maybe it's because of this, maybe it's because of trauma, maybe it's because of if you talk about it, you think it'll happen more. And the one thing that I think doesn't cause suicide is talking about suicide.
No, if anything, it would help prohibit it, because it's a subject that's out in the open, and, you know, people can suddenly be like, oh, there are other people who feel this way or are thinking about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like that same idea behind like sexual education, where it's like, oh, if we teach kids about sex, they're all going to start fucking and having babies. It's like, no, you're educating them and telling them about a thing that exists.
They're already having sex and having babies.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?
Educating people around suicide in multiple I mean, a lot of education about suicide is like suicide prevention, but it's like we should really talk openly about all aspects of it, because clearly it's a problem within society, because, you know, 47,500 people ever killed themselves in 2019, and 130 people on average kill themselves a day. So it's not like heart disease or something where it's just annihilating people left and right, but it is like an issue, and it's a real one. So it's like talking about it is not going to push somebody over the edge. Like if somebody's at that point where they're going to do it, talking about it isn't going to be the thing that finally puts the final nail in the coffin. It's
just you're not in charge of them. You're not responsible for them. You can say I influenced somebody, but where's the proof? Like I get that, like we're saying that talking about it isn't bad, but it isn't necessarily good either. Like it's just so at some points in life you have to kind of relinquish control, and you have to realize that you know, there are some really shitty things that go on in the world, and there's really, you know, negative stuff, and talking about it and understanding it and having the people who are engaged in it express themselves is the only way to learn about it and make any change about it. Like if you want to know about, you know, how to prevent cancer, you have to spend a ton of time studying it and researching and learning it. And the same with suicides. If you want to understand it, you got to talk to people who want to commit suicide, talk to people before they commit suicide, talk to people after they tried to commit suicide. And the problem is those people don't necessarily want to talk to you about it. They're not, you know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things that's like, it's very subjective, it's very personal. And it's, I think that I'm, you know, I don't even know where to go from here. I don't want to like, I feel like I'm just kind of saying the same stuff over and over again about its mysterious nature. It's kind of
haunting. Whoa.
Yeah,
silence.
I think it is. I don't know what it is. I think it is haunting. It's kind of haunts you to even contemplate, because humans have this odd circumstance where we can think about the future and we can think about life and we can make decisions about our actions. And one of those decisions is about the future. Like if we didn't contemplate the future, suicide wouldn't exist. You would never go, oh, I don't like the idea of the future. This sucks. And I'm going to do something now that stops the future. And so, you know, being able to think about what you're going to do next can be super good and super sucky at the same time. Because I half the time don't know what I'm going to do next. And I got to come up with bullshit because I'm on my own. You know, like adults are like, they're winging it constantly. Like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? you put it on your calendar and you do it. And I think that that's been something that helps me, is like disciplining myself away from the uncertainty of tomorrow, like making plans, sticking to them, doing things that are healthy, are really good for self-esteem. And there's a really good book by, I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I think it's called The 5 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And I read it a while back when I was trying to figure some stuff out. And I found it really helpful because it turned self-esteem into an actionable process, as opposed to a thing you just have or do not have. And it has to do with having a realistic ideal and working toward that. That's what I kind of am summarizing it as. I'm going to look it up real quick so I can promote it.
Well, and that kind of feeds back into what we were talking about earlier, is just people have to be like realistic with their goals and things, because if you're just constantly going for the top shelf, usually it doesn't work out for most people. And that's just the unfortunate truth. I mean, we'd all love to be famous musicians or actors or writers or, whatever. We all want to obviously be rich and comfortable, but the world is not built that way, unfortunately. And so a lot of us are left in the muck, as they say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one of many problems that people, pushes them towards these darker thoughts, I guess. But
yeah, I think you really do need to reassess your goals in life and look at what you can work toward, and it doesn't have to be a specific dollar amount or something like that. Or, I mean, it could be a car. I want to have this type of car. Okay, so what are the realistic steps to getting there? But I think that's a fairly superficial goal, personally.
Well, I think it's because we live in a superficial
okay.
society. I mean, we live in a capitalist country, so everything's governed by money and possessions.
A lot of it is, but as you get older, I think you start to realize that those things aren't going to lead toward as much happiness. And so you think, like, personally, I have goals related toward relationships and toward my own balance and psychological well-being, like goals of getting better at certain things and working towards certain things, as opposed to getting to an end of something. Anyway, that book that I was talking about is actually The 6 Pillars. There's more pillars than I said.
Oh, geez, you were going to cut out a whole pillar?
I guess. I don't know. I read it a long time ago, and I thought it was really helpful. It's by Nathaniel Branden, and it is The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And I listened to the audio of it while I was working over the course of a couple of days, and I found it to be inspirational and helped me kind of understand that it was something you can work toward, as opposed to something that you are inevitably either going to have or not.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, whatever.
Some people are, it's almost like the genetic disposition. Some people just have like a greater sense of self-esteem, and other people don't.
Yeah, and I think your parents in your early childhood can shape a lot of your self identity and your ideas of resilience and hope and things like that can come from that. And so if you're a parent, you are the steward of your child, and it's your job to support them toward having an identity that is not full of doubt and brokenness, in my opinion. I think that's part of your job, is to give them confidence in a certain capacity, which is a pretty complicated topic. Another thing, because we're getting into almost 2 hours here. There's a lot to talk about related to emotions and psychology and things like that. Yeah. And suicide is you kind of have to talk about the entirety of life to even have a conversation about it. So it can go on for a while, but
it's like skipping right to the end of the movie, like a really depressing movie.
What we might talk about next time is it won't be as long, I don't think, of a conversation, but the legalization of psilocybin for research purposes in Oregon, because that is specifically to address depression. And that could be a good thing going forward, and something that I, would be down to talk about in the future.
Well, I think we can put a pin in it there then.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like a conversation that doesn't really have a conclusion, because it's gonna just keep going on. It's like one of those things that just keeps happening, and it will keep happening till humans don't exist anymore. Unless science somehow created like some fucking happy pill that just made you fire on all cylinders all the time. But
I don't like that idea at all. I mean, unless there were no negative consequences to it. But the second some human being comes up to you and says, "Hey, I have a pill that has no negative side effects," I'm gonna punch that guy in the face.
Bye, sir.
Right, other than I have to take your pill and pay you money and suck your dick, like other than those things.
Whoa. Yeah, you have to pay him and suck his dick? Usually it's one or the other.
No negative side effects.
This is a really valuable pill.
Depends on how good you are at the pee sucking. That Deadwood book uses the word Peter for wiener. I think it's great.
Do they capitalize the P like it's a name, or do they just say, okay,
it's not like Peter, it's Peeder. Peter, like your dick. It's like a really old-fashioned word for penis, and I think it's lovely. My Peter. You done hurt my Peter. Yeah.
Anyway, everybody just find your own value in your life. That's what I would say.
As far as my own resolve to not kill myself, it's that I think that you have to accept that life is pain and you're going to have struggles, and I would rather deal with those struggles in whatever way I feel like and see what happens. It's all an experiment, and I'd rather do the experiment and fuck it all up than not do the experiment. And I that's easy to say because I'm not living other people's lives, but when I have pain and suffering and fear, I want to face it. I don't want to excuse it and hide it and run from it. I want to be the kind of person that takes it on and accepts it, even if that doesn't mean doing anything particularly heroic at all. Like if it means drinking booze alone in my room, then I'll do that, but I'm going to do that before I kill myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, depending on what you believe, that this is our, I mean, for me, like what I believe, that this is it. This is our one shot. So
yeah, that's what I think. So if I have one shot at it,
it's over. Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole like euthanasia, when you're like, debilitated, like, would you want somebody to pull the plug? And they can pull the plug. That's fine if I can't make the decision for myself. But if I can talk, I'm okay with being fucked up and on shit. I think I'd rather experience pain and horrible, catheter inducing situations and all that. I don't know. I at least I'm doing something. I'm existing.
See, for me, I'd like to think that I wouldn't, but it's hard when you're actually face with death.
Yeah, exactly. Just bullshit. I don't know what I'm talking about.
When people are like, "Oh, if I was, ever blind, if I ever went blind, just fucking kill me."
I'll go blind. I'm going blind.
It's like
that's happening. I'm gonna go deaf too.
Looking at it objectively, I'm like, yeah, like trying to imagine life without any kind of sight is horrifying, and I would probably want to die too. But I wouldn't know that until I was blind, and then be like,
well, and people.
Oh wait, blind. No, I can find shit to live for. Everybody has like their different levels of tolerance, I guess, for things. But I just mean like it's easy to say what you would or wouldn't do when you're not actually
of course
with the decision. So
I just hope I never have to deal with it, and I also don't want to control other people's decisions. If you don't like what you're doing, then you get to make decisions about how to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
unless you're my brother and I decide to stop you from making decisions, you know what I'm saying? Like there's no simple solution to anything. Even just trying to pick a fucking food to eat I'm hungry. That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm getting there too.
I haven't eaten at all today.
Well, it was a good talk. Like I said, it's just a fascinating topic, and I've talked to other people about it before too. And like I said, a lot of times people they just shy away from it, or they start getting uncomfortable really fast because it's such a touchy subject for some people. So
it's part of dealing with mortality. We're all going to die. People around us are going to die, and it's like totally acceptable if it's on accident or because of old age, which would suck. Like, but the second somebody takes that decision into their own hands, we want to have all these opinions about their ability and rights to do it. But it doesn't matter if they have the right to do it. They have the ability, and ability trumps rights most of the time. At least from a kind of individual act perspective. Anyway, whatever. It's impossible not to keep having things to say.
Right. Well,
do we want to do recommendations?
Yeah, I was saying, well, my recommendation, we already kind of talked about in the beginning, but I was going to recommend that people, if they're interested, check out that Zack Snyder cut for Justice League. If you got HBO Max or some other method for watching it, and you're interested, it's totally worth it. Don't let that 2017 Justice League movie deter you, because this is like a completely different movie that is far superior. The only downside is it's 4 hours long, so you'll need to dedicate a little time. Luckily, the movie's broken up into like 6 parts, so it's like something if you needed to take a break, there's like nice little breaks in the like built into the movie, kind of, where you could be like, oh, okay, cool, I can step away maybe for a little bit. But let's face it, we live in America during a pandemic where Netflix exists and people fucking binge watch shit all the time. So I feel like a 4-hour movie isn't really a big ask for a lot of people when they're watching fucking 12 hours of a season of a show in like a day. So but yeah, it's totally worth watching. It's entertaining. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's much better than the shit that we got a few years ago. What about you? What's your recommendation?
I recommend a movie called Quigley Down Under, which
that's an old one.
Yeah, I think they just added it to Netflix a couple months ago, and I ended up just putting it on, thinking like, oh, I feel like I remember this movie, and I'm sure I watched it a long time ago. But watching it again, I realized it was like pretty awesome. It's oh man, I always forget people's names.
I can't think of the guy who's in it either. I can like see his face, but I can't think of his name.
Burt Reynolds or something, but it's not.
Tom Skerritt, one of those fucking guys with a mustache.
It's the guy from Look Who's Talking. Tom Selleck.
Oh, Tom Selleck.
Yeah, Tom Selleck. But it's a Western, but it's got a different kind of a bent to it. It's about a guy who goes to Australia, and he's kind of hired on as a security guy. Like, he's like the best shot in the world, of course, because that's always a Western.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But he's good with a rifle. He doesn't even use a pistol, right? And so he's like the best shot with a rifle. And then he's supposed to protect this ranch, but he finds out that the main guy who owns the ranch is a piece of shit. And so instead of like just like almost immediately he gets into a fight with him. And he's just like, no, you guys are immoral a-holes. And then he meets this girl who seemingly has is mentally ill, but you find out that she's a little bit more than that. And
she's a psychic with telekinesis powers, and
yeah, you find out she's an alien. But no, it's interesting because it's in Australia, and it's about like the kind of colonialization of Australia against the Aborigines, and how they treated them, and how they a lot of like the racist remarks that they like thought of them as barbaric and things like that, similar to Native American history. But I think in Australia it was a little bit more recent, and like there's still a lot of issues with racism in that area. Not that there aren't everywhere, but anyway, it's a good Western, and it's I thought it has a good story.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since I was a kid, but I remember my grandparents would watch it pretty regularly. Well, they're in rotation with their other John Wayne and Clint Eastwood Westerns. They were like huge Western fans. They were always watching Westerns when I went over to their house. So
yeah, my dad used to love John Wayne movies.
That's I never liked John Wayne or anything.
I didn't
Clint Eastwood,
like him.
man. I liked Clint Eastwood's.
I never got to watch the Clint Eastwood ones till I was older, because my parents were so puritanical, and so it was all because John Wayne ones. Those are just like they're
a little more family friendly.
Milk
I feel
toast.
Like
yeah, I mean they're like super racist, but like not the violence isn't as realistic. And
I feel like John Wayne was always realistic. They were always like really black and white movies. Like he was always the good guy.
Yeah.
infallible, unflappable, like awesome hero guy.
Yep.
Whereas when he and I didn't realize this when I was a kid until I was watching him recently, but especially like the spaghetti westerns, like Clint Eastwood was always kind of an anti-hero. He was always like sort of playing some kind of system of people against each other, and like he was supposed to kind of be the hero, but then he does some fucked up shit, dude. When you watch like Hang 'em High, which is a great movie. Or no, sorry, not High Plains Drifter, not Hang 'em High. High Plains Drifter, where he's kind of like playing like a sort of a reincarnation or a ghost of a guy that was killed in this town. Well, he ends up like going to the town, and there's a scene where he literally rapes a woman. Like,
oh, geez.
When you're watching it and you're like, what the fuck is happening right now? So then, like after that scene, as I'm watching the rest of the movie, I'm like,
oh, I kind of hope
I
he dies.
I don't really want to root for this guy. Like, he like raped a woman in this scene. Like,
that's not good.
I feel like they try to frame it where you find out that she's not really that great of a person. But I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the day, he's still raped a person.
But what's interesting is that like obviously that's bad, but also he goes around killing people. Like,
yeah,
like it's funny because like it's another one of those things. It's like we just put justifications on stuff. Like you can kill the right people, that's okay, but you know, obviously raping the wrong person doesn't make any sense because that's a different act. But like if she was such a horrible person and he just shot her, would you care at all? Like if she was like if she killed her baby and then like, you know, she's about to kill another baby and you kill her. Like we also have a totally different perception of like how we should deal with men and women. Like we, you know, you could kill 15 men, but you shoot one woman who's also a baddie and you're like, but was she really that bad? Because we don't put them in the same, you know, it's like a totally different.
That'd be a fun conversation.
Not all rational,
like gendered, you know, differences between men and women. That'd be
a
really long
conversation. Canceled immediately. Yeah, it's very interesting because there's a lot of traditions behind it. Like it's just not the same in different cultures between the way people think of men and women.
Well, not within different cultures, and then even within generations. I mean, look at the way
things change all the time.
Movies that were made in the 60s and 70s, you could not, if you made a movie like that now with a straight face, Jesus, you would be canceled immediately. People have a fucking field day with you.
Yeah, they're in different
which is good. Like it's funny, like older people view this as like some cancer culture is this bullshit, and I'm like, well, welcome to culture. It changes and evolves over time, and that's just where we're at right now. And sorry you're getting old and you just don't fit in as well as you used to. Times are a changing, and
it is interesting.
And the next generations after these ones will be doing fucking moving to the beat of their own drum too.
Well, and it's like, can you adapt? Can you adapt to the new
That's what it is.
system? And it changes so rapidly now that
technology.
You have to know what fucking the word simp means.
Yep. Don't be a stan.
Don't be a stan.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. Let's be done.
Let's go. Let's cap it off. Let's end it so we can go get some.
All right. So go to joesnotsblog.com. Go to Channing Cornwall on Amazon to find Amazon books by Channing Cornwall. Please read his books. They're good. I'm horribly biased, but do it anyway.
I think they're pretty good too. I mean, I'm biased, but I feel it's fun when you can go back and like read a book that you wrote like 7 years ago, and it's almost like I don't remember like much about it.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like somebody else wrote it, and you're like, this is actually, I'm pretty impressed with this.
And if you look at it on, if you listen on Spotify or you watch on YouTube or you listen on any other app, Apple, make sure to rate, review, comment,
subscribe,
whatever you got to do. If you like it, then let us know by doing all of that. And other than that, we'll see you next time.
Deuces.